everybody. I didn't have any intro music, maybe I should have. So, it's Amanda. I'm here today to show you... Amanda and Chris. Sorry, Chris is holding the camera for me, being a great little helper. I'm just going to do Brownies 101 today. It's really easy. It may look like a lot right here, but you'll see as I go through everything that it's not. So basically, that was the buzzer on the oven. The first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 350. And what I do first usually is always get my pan ready. And so this recipe for brownies is going to be a 13 by 9 pan. And you'll notice this pan is ancient. I think it was Chris's mom's that they had. Chris is shaking his head yes. They had it in his apartment on High Street, I think.
I believe that's correct.
Yes, so it's quite the old pan, but that's what I mean. It's just a simple 13 by 9 pan. Now, I'm not a big one to do the greasing and flouring of a pan because it's a pain in the butt to clean. So, what I do is parchment. If you guys don't use parchment paper, I suggest start using parchment paper. It really helps with your cleaning time. You'll see it's this piece of paper. I'll take my little clip off. And what I did was, I just did for the width of the pan. And then I'm just laying it as flat as can be. And I learned this next trick from, I think, Ina Garden or Martha Stewart. You take some little binder clips and you put them on the edge so that it helps keep the paper down nice and flat. And you'll see later when we have to spread the brownies out that it's a very thick batter, and you'll want these on here. You won't bake with them. You can, but we won't bake with them. Okay, so for this recipe, and I will post the recipe in the comments below after we're done. I was going to write them down but realized they'd be backwards, so that wouldn't help you. So what you'll need is 1 2/3 cup of sugar. This is 2 tablespoons of water. This is 1 1/2 sticks of unsalted butter. Now let me explain something about unsalted butter. Most recipes when you bake will usually call for unsalted butter, and the reason why is because if you use salted butter in your recipes, you're affecting the salt content because you're going to usually end up adding salt as well. So if you're adding salt to your recipe and using salted butter, there's going to be a different variation in the taste. I always use unsalted. I never ever use salted butter. But a friend of mine really likes salt, and she says that she uses salted because she doesn't mind the extra saltiness. So it's up to you, but just as a little tidbit, and what I learned in school is we always used unsalted. Anyway, so that's 1 1/2 sticks of unsalted butter that's been melted in the microwave. It takes, depending how cold your butter is, 30 seconds or so. And so usually, I have everything measured out now, but usually I will do this right after I start the oven so that it's kind of cooling down a little bit, because when it does get mixed in with the eggs, we don't want it really hot when we mix the eggs in. Our eggs are 2 eggs, large. Really large is the way to go. Ina Garden does hers extra large everything. I never do. These are just large. Then we have 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I use organic vanilla now. I just find it's just a little bit better. I don't know why necessarily, maybe it's just my mind, but okay. Then on to the dry ingredients. This is 3/4 of a cup of cocoa powder. Now, my cocoa powder that I'm currently using is the Ghirardelli 100% cocoa. Now, this is probably about $4 a bag, so it's a little on the high side, but it's a very good quality. You can also get something like Nestle, which is just fine, but there is a little bit of a difference in the flavor. Now, the Nestle does have this recipe on there. This is where I got it from. However, I do make some variations in the way that I put it together. So it's technically Nestle's recipe, but I do some different things with it. But anyway, going back to, you'll see other cocos in the store. There's Drost, which is very expensive. That's like $9.99 a package, but it's a really good product. When you pay a little bit more and you get a better product, it shows in what you make. So that's the cocoa powder. Here we have 1 1/3 cup of flour. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay, so what I usually do then, the recipe on the Nestle package doesn't call for this, but I sift my dry ingredients. So I just have my bowl with my sifter on top. I'm gonna pour my flour in the sifter, the cocoa powder, your salt. Oh, got stuck. And our baking powder. And you can just leave that in there for the time being. Now we're gonna go over here. The first thing that we're gonna do is put our sugar in, and then we're gonna put our 2 tablespoons of water. Sometimes people wonder why you put water in something, and you'll see I'm just mixing this together. It's like a big blob right now. However, you'll see as I work the watered sugar, really is what it kind of is right now, I start breaking it up. And I believe that the water helps with the moisture because these are rich and fudgy brownie. These are not cake-like. So you see I'm just breaking it up. I don't want like these big lumps in there. And you don't want hot water. It's just right out of, we have a filtered water on our sink. That's all it is. And so it ends up being a consistency kind of like snow, I guess. Now we're going to add our melted butter. These aren't low-fat brownies, obviously, when you have a 1 1/2 sticks of butter in there. So now we're just going to add our butter and stir it, mix it together. You don't want to whip it or do anything like that. This is all by hand. I'm just wanting it to get incorporated, so there's also no chunks of sugars left in there, so it's pretty smooth. But then I also don't want like a pool of butter sitting anywhere. So you see that ends up being almost like a slushy consistency. Now with my eggs, another thing the recipe on the package doesn't call for, but I do, is I pour my vanilla into my eggs. And then I mix up my eggs a bit. Not crazy, but I find that if you add each egg, you're kind of overworking your batter because you have to really mix in that egg then. And especially with these, we don't want to incorporate a lot more air in here and be whipping it because we want that fudgy consistency. So then we're just going to pour our eggs in. And again, going back into the beginning when you have your melted butter, see now I added these eggs and the melted butter isn't really hot anymore. But if I would have added this egg mixture right into after the butter and it was really hot, you could have some scrambled eggs, which you don't want. So now this is, you do have to work it a bit. See how you can still see the egg in there, and you just keep working it. See how I kind of have like a folding action where I go to the bottom. That's kind of how I keep stirring it so that I'm getting everything incorporated. Okay, so you see, egg is almost 100% in there. Very soupy-like. All right, that's ready. So now we go back to our dry, and I'm going to sift them all together. And why I do this, and why the recipe doesn't call for it, is I like it because then there's no lumps of anything. Because you'll see, when you have cocoa powder, you're going to get lumps. And so I just kind of pat those through. You can use a spoon if you don't want to use your hand. My hands have been washed numerous times. Okay. And you'll see, like, once it's all incorporated, it's very soft, no lumps, and that's what you're looking for. So now I'm going to add this into this mixture in 2 batches. I'm going to do the first batch. Now this Again, I try not to overwork my batter too much. It's brownies, so it's not like it's a cake, it's not gonna fall, but I just try to be a little bit more gentle. And you'll see I'm just kind of turning my bowl. Give it a couple good stirs. And you'll be like, but it's not incorporating, what's happening? Why isn't it doing anything? Just keep going. It'll get in there, it'll be okay. And I kind of use the side of my spoon to scrape down so it's not all stuck on the sides. You see, all of a sudden it kind of just comes together. Okay? Right at this point is when we can add the rest of our flour mixture. And again, just be a little soft when you start to stir because you don't want it splashing all over the place. Now, some people have made this brownie recipe and I think they have used a stand mixer, and that's fine. I like doing it old school. I like doing it by hand. I make sure everything gets in there and I'm taking the time to just make sure it's incorporated well. And you see, like, again, you might get to this point and you think, how is it coming together? I keep stirring. Just keep going. It comes together, trust me. Give it a couple good stirs. Go back to scraping the sides. See? Now is when you get your elbow grease and you really stir it. And just like that, you got your brownie batter. Now you can just sit and eat this if you want. It's pretty good. Lick the bowl, but we want to bake it. So, we'll get our pan. What I usually try to do, because you can see it's a thick batter, so I try to make sure that I'm going in the middle with pouring it out of the pan, or the bowl, excuse me. Because I want to try to cover as much as I can instead of just putting like a big blob in one spot. I'm just going to try to scrape as much out as I can. Okay. Alright, so then I use an offset spatula. You can use a larger one. I prefer a smaller one because I have better control. And I'm going to scrape off whatever's remaining on the spoon, because as you can see, there's quite a bit. And you could also take a bowl scraper and get really the rest of that out if you want. I just didn't do that today. Okay, so, and you'll see at this point, these being on here really help, because when you start to spread this batter, you're going to see how thick it is. And if you don't have these set in place, and you see I'm even holding it down here, because then your paper is going to move. And so you just want to go into your corners as well as you can. I kind of go into one first, then I turn my pan. And these are a thin brownie, these aren't a thick brownie.
There's a question. What if you don't have a spatula?
If you don't have a spatula, feel free to use your spoon. You know, you may not get it as smooth as I'm getting. That's fine. They're still going to taste just as good. I wouldn't suggest using a knife or anything because it's going to be straight. And when you're trying to smooth something with something that's straight, it's not going to work. But if you have the spoon, you can kind of use that tip and it might not be as bad. But I will suggest investing in one. It comes in handy for lots of things instead of just cakes and brownies and such. You can find them at your grocery store too. So you see, I just kind of go into the corners. And I just realized that I didn't spray the inside of the pan before I did this. So, what you want to do, and see, I even had it to spray out, but I forgot. So, because I layered with parchment, the inside, this will be fine coming out. These edges may get a little stuck now because I didn't spray it. You can just do a quick spray on each side. So, we'll see what happens later. But because there's so much butter in these, they don't stick too bad. We'll see. See what happens. Okay, so we see that they're pretty flat. Now, what I also do is I slam it on the counter because I'm trying to get some air bubbles out of there. So you literally just do that. If you don't want to do it on your counter and you don't want to do it, don't worry about it. But that's what I do, okay? So I'm gonna take these off and I'm gonna grab a pair of scissors because I don't want all this overhang. And I'm just gonna take the excess parchment off the edge. And now these are gonna go in the oven. Based on my oven at 350, they go for 18 minutes and 30 seconds, exactly. Nothing more, nothing less. So what you're looking for in the end is you can test it. It's gonna be sticky, but not wet. There's a difference. And so you may have like a little bit of brownie on there, and that's perfect. You don't want it wet, where you like take it out and it's all gooey. We'll come back as I'm taking them out to show you what they'll look like. But so 18 and a half minutes, 350. Right in the middle shelf. Just like that. 1830. And there we go. So, does anybody have any other questions right now that those are in there? If not, that's the brownies. See, it's very simple. The only thing you may not have on hand is the cocoa powder on your next curbside, or if you go to the store, just order one, and then you only need a three-quarters of a cup at a time, so you'll have it for a while.
If I added chocolate chips, would I leave it in longer or the same time?
Same time. Same time.
That was Mariana.
Mariana, yes. Thank you. It's a good question, because I will randomly add things to them. You can add nuts to them. If you add nuts, you could do about a half a cup. Chips, I've done it where I've added chips and nuts, half a cup of each, to the same batter. I don't adjust anything. I don't adjust the time. They still bake for the same amount of time, and they turn out really good. And usually what I do with these brownies is I will cover them with ganache afterwards, but I'm not doing that this time. I'll do that another time to show everybody how to make ganache. But that's it for right now. If there aren't any other questions, then thank you for watching, and we'll come back in 17 minutes to show you what they look like when I take them out of the oven, just so you can see the top, what it will resemble. And that's it. Thank you.